This is one of my favorite abdominal exercises. It's called the assisted straight leg raise. We're also going to show you the unassisted straight leg raise. This exercise is great for a few reasons. The first is that it really activates the abs and gets the core going. The second is because it helps cure anybody who has seriously tight hamstrings. You see, a lot of the issue with people who have tight hamstrings is that it's not so much that the muscle itself is tight and you need to stretch it, it's that your core is super weak and your pelvis gets pulled out of place, which in turn pulls and lengthens and stretches the hamstrings. This exercise actually forces your pelvis to be in a neutral position because when one leg is working, going up and down, the other leg is staying up in the air, which prevents your pelvis from tilting forwards and backwards. That means you can focus so much more on your abs, and especially having the legs locked out and straight, it forces your abdomen and your hip flexors to work that much harder. Whereas if both legs move at the same time, your pelvis will kind of rotate and shift, and you might feel your lower back, and that's something that we do not want. Super important that you keep the leg as straight as possible and really brace your abs and actually pull that band hard into you. Keeping the legs as straight as possible and then as high as you can get it straight is going to really force the abs to work hard.
Next up, we're going to target our posterior chain, which is hamstrings, glutes, and although your lower back will still work, we also want your core working just as hard so you stabilize it. We don't want you rounding your lower back too much or even hyperextending it. So what a Romanian deadlift looks like is putting both feet over top of a band like this. I feel a lot of tension right now just standing tall. And you keep your back straight, soft bend in the knees till you feel the load in your hamstrings. Keep the core tight and come back up. Now some people can go real low. I can go pretty much to have my hands just below the knees, which is fine. You just want to feel the right muscles working. This exercise doesn't feel so intense, even at 15 to 20 reps, but man, will it really get your hamstrings.
Okay, this is a very simple single arm overhead press. What we're going to do here is put our foot through the band, step on the ground, then put our hand through the band and just press upwards. Now while you're doing this, you still want to brace your abs, keeping your core tight, and at the same time squeeze your butt, because it's really easy to lean back too far to ease and use your lower back as leverage to help get the band up. We don't want that. We don't want to put your lower back at any risk of pain or injury, and we want to make sure that we're working the right muscles, which in this case is the shoulder muscles, your delts, and your triceps. So here I am just showing the other side, and you see that everything is straight in line. My ankles, my hips, my shoulders, and my hand, once it gets above head, is all in a straight line. I'm not leaning too far backwards or too forwards. To make it harder, you simply put both feet through the band and widen your stance a little bit so that it creates a little more resistance in the band. And now I'm going to show you what I don't want you to do. That's what I mean by hyperextending and using your lower back too much. That's going to put your lower back at risk of injury. Do not do that. And this is the right way to do it, keeping all the joints stacked, glutes and abs are tight, and pressing straight overhead. Here we're going to go over two types of band rows. One is the single arm row in the standing position. You can see here that I just anchor the band around a pole or something sturdy. I get in my split stance so that my body doesn't sway backwards and forwards. And you're just rowing down and back. You don't need to overdo it. You see here that my arm is rowing pretty much just past the 90-degree angle there, and that's definitely sufficient. And you also don't want to be shrugging up with your traps too much. You just want to be rowing it back. Now this version, I'm standing on the band with both legs. I'm holding it with both arms, however I'm only rowing with one arm at a time to make sure that I can create as much tension as possible. Now a single arm row usually allows you to work a bigger range of motion in your mid-back than a standard double arm row, and it allows you to focus more on that one muscle group. This is the band pull-through exercise. There's two variations here. You can choose either or. The one on the left is a regular band pull-through that kind of mimics doing either like a hip thrust or a deadlift. It's basically hinging at the hips. And what we want to do is focus on the hamstrings and the glutes and the core to actually push your hips backwards and forwards. If you feel it in your lower back, you're doing it. This is the band pull-through exercise. There's two variations here. You can choose either or. The one on the left is a regular band pull-through that kind of mimics doing either like a hip thrust or a deadlift. It's basically hinging at the hips. And what we want to do is focus on the hamstrings and the glutes and the core to actually push your hips backwards and forwards. If you feel it in your lower back, you're doing it wrong. We don't want your lower back pulling up. We want your abs tight so that you maintain a neutral spine, and then you squeeze your butt and your hamstrings, digging your feet and heels into the ground and thrusting your hips forward. Now the right side is just a little bit easier of a variation for you to understand how to hinge at the hips. If you pay attention to my pelvis and my hips, you'll see that all the movement starts from the glutes and it thrusts forward. It doesn't start from my lower back leaning backwards. Give the right one a try first, and if you can handle it no problem and you feel the right muscles, the glutes, then you can move on to regular pull-throughs where it adds a little more hamstring. Resistance band bicep curls. What you do first is put your feet in between the bands so the bands are underneath both feet. You grip at the top of the band with both arms and you curl up. Now you'll notice here that at the bottom I actually contract my triceps. This is so that the biceps can get a full stretch at the bottom, and a fully stretched muscle is a fully worked muscle. At the top, I'm doing a full range of motion without actually moving my shoulder. You'll see that my arm doesn't move forwards or backwards behind my body. That would be kind of cheating. Sometimes it's okay, but with something light like a band, we want a nice strict form. You can do these with both a hammer grip, which is neutral, or the grip that I'm using here, an underhand grip. This is how we do triceps push-downs with the resistance band. We loop it around a bar, anything that you might have at home like that. Maybe you have a little home gym, you have a pull-up bar, or even your railings at the top of a stairwell. Anything you can think of that's sturdy enough to hold the resistance band. From there, you're going to lean forward a little bit so that you have a good balance point from the weight that you're going to be pushing down. And you can see here that my arms go in a full range of motion. All the way up so that my forearms touch my biceps, and all the way down so that I'm squeezing my triceps as my arm is locked out. Now always remember that muscle activation is key to results, and you always get better results with a full range of motion. This means we do not want you cheating and doing only half reps. The tempo is important too. We don't want you going too fast so that on the way down there's no tension. You still want to control the tension on the way down. In this program, you're only required to do one of these two exercises, but we're just going to show you your other option right after this because it's the last exercise in the program. This is a different variation. This is how you can do overhead triceps press, and this is just if you don't have anything above you to anchor the band around. If you have a pole or something like that, then you'll use this exercise instead. In terms of which variation is better, they both do different things. You can push more weight on an actual push down, the first variation, but this has its own benefits of having a little bit more tension right at the very beginning.